Hello everyone, welcome to Open Line. Does Nashville need a community oversight board with investigative powers over the Nashville Police Department? That's our topic tonight. We booked this show before the events of the day when the district attorney released a video that shows Daniel Hambrick running from a police officer as he is shot. That will certainly be part of our conversation, but I want to make it clear we booked this show before that video was released, and this has been an ongoing sort of discussion. Should we have a community oversight board? Happy to have with us two people who have been adamant that we do need a community oversight board. Jacola Lane and Melissa Cherry, both with Community Oversight Now. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So let's take a step back. What is a community oversight board? What would it do? What would you say there?
Sure. A community oversight board is an independent board to be able to look into misconduct of the police, any type of complaints, so the police isn't policing themselves, basically. Because right now, their internal Department of Professional Accountability does all that. And there's been a lot of concern about the way those have been handled. We think the best way and the historic way that has been fought for years is to have that independent board to be able to do it.
How would that work? How many people are on it? Who picks who is on it? And it says it has investigative powers. So they can subpoena officers, I guess. They could subpoena video, all of those things. How does it work?
The board itself would be made up of 11 members. 7 of those members would be nominated by community organizations, whether it's a homeowners association or another nonprofit organization in the community. 4 of those would be nominated by Metro Council and 2 by the mayor. And all of those nominees would be approved by Metro Council. They would be in charge of anything that is communicated by a civilian. So if a civilian has an interaction with an officer that they feel was abusive or excessive, they would be able to file that complaint with the Community Oversight Board, which would be staffed with investigators. And the board itself would review the investigation and make recommendations about any kind of discipline or policy change that may be in order.
Is this done in other cities? How common is this?
Yes.
There are over 200 community oversight boards across the country currently. And in Tennessee, Memphis, Knoxville, and Lebanon, Tennessee have community oversight boards.
We're also streaming this live on our Facebook page, so if you want to comment there in the comment section, you certainly may call in as we continue the discussion. There's the number 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. So where do you stand now? This is what you have been working toward. You would like a community oversight board. Take us, you've been asking for this for a while and it hasn't happened, right?
Right.
How long have you, what sort of steps have you been taking? How long have you been asking for this?
Sure. Well, I personally have been asking for this since last year in 2017 when Jacquees Clemens was killed. But years before that, it was something that was asked for. My uncle was killed in December of 2000, and if you go back and look at the newspaper articles then, they were asking for it. Even when they had a citizen that was inside the OPA, Office of Professional Accountability, afterwards they were still asking for an independent board because it still was not working. And that year in 2000, 5 people were killed and shot at by police. So at this point, you know, we moved forward with protests for Jacquees Clemens' killing because the officer who killed him, Joshua Lippert, had been suspended 5 times. And so it was our belief that if something like this was in place, it could have been preventative of someone losing their life. And we moved forward with trying to get this through council. We listed 6 demands to former Mayor Megan Barry. It wasn't receptive. They weren't receptive to it. So we moved forward with the referendum and we turned in double the amount of signatures that we needed last week to the Metropolitan Clerk. Over 8,200 people registered to vote in Nashville signed up onto the petition. So our plan is to have it on the November 6th ballot for Nashville voters to be able to vote on it.
So that's pretty important. So you have turned in double the number of signatures you feel like you need. Mm-hmm. The Election Commission is then going to verify whether you have enough signatures. Correct. You feel like, again, you've turned in double the amount. You feel confident that will happen. Has not happened yet. If it is verified, then it will be on the November ballot.
Correct.
And what will it say on the ballot? What will be on the ballot? Should there be a community oversight board? Does it mention there are 11 people? What would be on the ballot?
The ballot itself would describe the process that I described earlier about the composition of the board itself. It would have information about what complaints they would handle and how the board would be made up, basically.
And the important part of this board is that it's funded. The model that we have has to be funded, because that has been what's been problematic, is when this is only volunteer based, they, you know, disintegrate. And we want this to be folks' full-time job. You know, it shows that it have an executive director, an assistant director, investigators, legal, all that is needed to have this to be able to move forward in Nashville. And Nashvillians overwhelmingly have been supporting this.
You have asked for this for a while. You had to take the step of actually getting it on the ballot. Why do you think it wasn't being approved? Why do you feel like the council didn't want it? You felt like the last mayor, I believe you said Mayor Berry, was not receptive to this. Why do you think they weren't open to this idea?
We think it's largely because of a lack of political will, because a lot of the council members who, you know, opposed it or even abstained to it signed the petition. You know, we had council members coming to us late in the night to sign it the day before we turned it in, and folks who did not vote yes. Only 5 people voted yes out of the 40 body. So I think, you know, belief shifted. I think people understand now, especially with the current situation that we're dealing with the loss of Daniel Hembrick, the importance of this, and that, you know, I mean, there's a real concern in some of Nashville's over-policed communities of misconduct and mistrust.
Now on Facebook, again, we're streaming this live on our Facebook page. We're getting several comments. Some people say we need it. Craig Reese says it's the death of a department. People who have no idea how to police would then, I guess, be in charge of a department. What do you say to that criticism?
Well, there is actually processes in place where they will be trained. Everyone will be trained. They have to go to the Citizens Academy. They have to learn all of the policies and procedures of the Metro Nashville Police Department. So it wouldn't be like we would just be up and appointing ourselves. And all this is out there for everyone to read, to review, to dive as deep as they would like to. Community Oversight Now Nashville, if you just Google it, we have a WordPress where all of this is laid out.
So someone, Blaine McAllister, seems to be saying his concern is people who have zero law enforcement background will be on this panel or this board. Is that accurate?
Well, there will be people that do not have law enforcement background, absolutely. And like Jacola explained, those people would be trained by the Citizens Academy, and they would have to learn all of Metro's policies regarding policing. But it's also important to add that they're not the ones that are going to be doing the investigating. We'll be hiring investigators, independent investigators that are not funded or hired or fired by the police department to make the investigations themselves. The investigators then bring their information to the board, and the board simply decides what type of discipline or policy change might be in order because of the circumstances.
So you feel like it'll be on the ballot. Again, that's not been approved by the Election Commission. You've turned in what you feel like is double the number of signatures, then they have to approve it. Then it will be on the November ballot. What sort of campaign happens at that point? Let's say it is on the ballot in November. What do you do then?
It's mainly an education campaign. We're going to be, you know, going out talking to folks, and we have to get creative because we don't have, you know, the tons of money that transit campaigns and, you know, other referendums in Nashville has had behind them. But that's mostly what we will be turning to as education campaign. You have anything to add to that, Melissa?
Yeah, it will definitely be an education campaign. As noted in the comments that you see, a lot of the pushback that we receive about community oversight is based on a misunderstanding of what the board is, how it functions, who will be on it, and why it needs to function the way it does. So educating people about what it actually is instead of fear-based, you know, tactics.
Laura Compton says if it saves a single life, it's worth it. She says that on our Facebook feed. Rachel Elizabeth asks, would criminals be held accountable? There's a lot of concern on Facebook when you look at the feed that, you know, this would allow criminals to get away with things and that kind of thing. So the question that I'll choose from Rachel Elizabeth, would criminals be held accountable? What about that, I guess, concern question?
We are not turning ourselves into a police department, so we wouldn't be charging anyone with criminal charges or anything like that. This isn't an alternative to policing. It is an independent board to provide community with the structure to be able to provide some safety measures and some investigative powers when there is misconduct, because over 90% of the complaints against the police are justified, and a lot of people don't even send in complaints because of their concern that it will just be justified. Since we launched the referendum, we've gotten calls about, concerned citizens about illegal, searches and things of that nature. That's not even, a shooting. It isn't just about shooting. It's small things that could happen, from a traffic stop or being maced. These are some of the calls I've personally received since I've been, working on this campaign for the Community Oversight Board. And
so the board, if it is approved and you get a complaint like that, so yeah, I was thinking, okay, we're talking about shootings. You're saying it's about a lot of different stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
You would investigate, and I guess the investigation would be, you have the power to subpoena the officer, any other relevant facts, information, then you make a decision. What happens? Let's say you say there was a fault on the part of an officer. What power does the board have?
Yeah. So that, again, is more of an education campaign. So the board would be able to make a recommendation to the chief of police about any kind of discipline or policy change that they recommend, and the chief would have the ability to enforce or not enforce that recommendation. The way that our charter is written is that if the acting chief decides to not implement a policy change or a discipline recommendation that's made by the COB, that he or she would have to make a public statement as to why. So we've heard a lot of people in high places say that the broad population in Nashville doesn't understand that this is an issue, or that thinks that there's not a problem here. So if there's a pattern that develops that the chief is not implementing the recommendations of the board, that in itself is an education campaign for the wider public to understand that potentially there is a problem, and perhaps the chief is not the one that needs to have that final authority.
So you would have subpoena power, this board would have subpoena power, you could investigate, but really doesn't have the power to discipline anyone. It's only a recommendation.
Right. It has no unilateral power. It would have subpoena power as long as there's not an active investigation going on. So like you mentioned, a lot of people associate this strictly with shootings, but this is more helpful in the sense of providing peace of mind for people when they are pulled over or they have an interaction with a police officer that they think was disrespectful, excessive, or abusive. And those are the cases that slip through the cracks, and those are the cases that are always deemed justified, and those are the reasons why people don't bring their concerns to the OPA anymore.
Okay, all right, that really sets the table for the discussion. A lot of comments on Facebook. Keep commenting on Facebook. I'm going to take a couple calls now. Let's go to Brian. Hello, Brian.
Hi, yes. Nashville, even though we're about 790,000 now, when I first moved here, 600,000, maybe 800,000, we've got 28 city council members. Chicago has 5 or 6 million people, has 33. They say that the larger the amount of the members in the city council, it makes the mayor's power greater. The Nashville
40
mayor
members.
has always had great power.
Right.
And you have to understand that Nashville is also a seat of power for the state of Tennessee. There's only a few states in the United States of America where the state capital is also the largest city. Maybe 4 or 5 tops. So,
So what's your question when it comes to this? What is your question about community oversight?
We'll stomp you down. You try to do anything, we will stomp you down. No problem with that.
So do you support it? You want one of these? You think a community oversight board's a good idea?
I don't know. I really don't know, because with that super majority of Republicans, there's no way they're going to have it.
Okay, that's interesting. All right, so he's saying, I think there's some things that we could clarify from his point of view. He's talking repeatedly about the legislature and the Metro Council. The Metro Council, not the state legislature, right. They would approve the members that are on this board. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And so when he's saying the Republican, that has nothing to do with this. We're talking about the Metro Council.
Correct.
Okay, let's go to Phyllis. Is it Phyllis on line 2?
Hi, thank you.
Hi, go right ahead. What's on your mind?
Oh, I just wanted to comment about, I believe that there should be some kind of oversight. I'm 60 years old. I've been observing the police force from afar, and I realize that it seems like they are abusing their power somewhat, and I think it's systemic. I think it leads from the high court costs that people that are either middle class or lower class can't afford half the fines that they're getting for whatever, DUIs, drug charges, whatever, and they just seem to keep going back to discouraging lifestyle. But the other thing is that I've seen them. They act like they're on steroids, the way they act, in their shiny cars and their beautiful guns, and they way over they act like punks. And I'm sorry, but I don't even like looking at cops anymore. And they used to be our friends, but they're abusing their power, and I feel bad for everyone.
All right, there's some blanket statements in there. I want to ask you all, I've thought for a long time there was a good relationship between much of the community and the police department. What is your feeling? What is the relationship between the community and the Metro Police Department?
It is my feeling that in the hyper-policed, over-policed communities that there is a lot of mistrust. And it's, noticeable on social media. It's noticeable when folks are patrolling. People go in their houses quickly as police are coming through the neighborhood in certain neighborhoods. So I think that's concerning. But I think what's important about the Community Oversight Board is that we're helping on both ends. We're not anti-police, and that's been a narrative that has been painted and has been used to kind of taint our message and our need. But that's not the case at all. And we know that in other cities it has helped both the police and the citizens, and has actually bridged the mistrust in some of the hyper-police communities. What is
your sense? What is the how is the police perceived across the community? Again, I was under the understanding for a long time that there was a good relationship between the police department and many parts of the community. I feel like that's being challenged more and more. But where are we now in Nashville?
Well, I have to be honest, if you had asked me about 6 years ago, I would probably have a similar answer to yours. I think that our police department has a great PR presence. Even when police killings impacted us, they showed up with hot chocolate, and they were very cordial to the people that were protesting. But the more that veneer is picked away over the last few years, it's been pretty clear that those were moves that were very PR-centered. And when the rubber meets the road, we saw what happened with Jacquees Clemens. We saw the public disrespect. We saw the clashing between the DA, the mayor, the chief. Most people don't realize that the mayor is actually the chief of police's boss, and that, those things are beginning to deteriorate, and I believe that Nashville is waking up to realize that we're just like every other city in this country, and that to provide transparency and accountability can only help everyone.
Okay, all right, we're going to take a break. If you are on the line, hold on. If you're commenting on Facebook, continue to comment. I'll read some comments. We'll take a break, be back right after this.